Hello and welcome once again to the Foxfire Farmhouse. I don't know what that is.
The barley is blowing in the breeze.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful day.
Yes.
Here at the farmhouse. Spring is coming.
It's the wrong time for barley.
Yeah. The spring barley.
Yes, the spring
the
type.
spring.
Yes.
That's
It's my favorite
Yes.
barley. Nothing like curling up on a nice 70-degree day and having some barley soup. Some beef and barley.
my favorite.
Is anybody
pastime.
else sweating?
Brings me back to my childhood.
Yeah. Staple dish of the springtime.
You know what I love it.
Anyways.
Oh, well, hi, my name is Josh Bartels, and I'm one of the hosts here at the Foxfire Farmhouse, a place where we talk about all things storytelling and digital media. And I'm joined, as usual, by
Elijah Heyman.
the one and only.
The one and only. One of a kind.
One of a kind. He's the only Elijah Heyman I know.
That's good. That's
Yep.
good.
And-
It used to be the only Elijah. But that has changed.
And then that changed.
Yeah.
Yep. But nonetheless, we are here and we are ready to talk
Shout out to
about
Elijah.
all things storytelling and digital media. That's kind of our shtick around here. And we're going to get to that here in just a moment. But before we do, we like to talk about things that we've been experiencing that are cool.
Cool things.
So, what's been cool?
Well, I was thinking about it, and I was just thinking about more experiences that are cool instead of a movie or song or whatever.
Yeah.
Plenty of those things in the brain. But at work, I've talked about it a couple times. We watch movies during lunch.
Nice.
It's something that we started. One of the guys brought in a trashy DVD player that he had in the closet that he was going to throw away, and doesn't have a remote, and you can only hit
Awesome.
play. So you have to watch all of the trailers, and you hope that the breaker doesn't pop. So that way you have to start the movie over again. But so I was just thinking about that and just how it's a cool way to get everybody off of their phones during lunch.
Yeah.
And to do something communal
Nice.
that you guys can all share together. And I mean, it's produced some really cool conversations about the movies. And since I was one of the ones who really instigated it, I'm able to curate good movies, even though the occasional bad movie comes in there.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's
That's
a
cool.
fun experience. Just get together and, like I said, conversations go out throughout the day, and we're talking about Braveheart or The Magnificent Seven's what we're watching right now.
Oh, yeah.
Get to
Good.
talk about westerns.
Which one?
The new one.
Okay. Denzel Washington and Chris Pratt.
which I enjoyed that one a lot. Not as good as the original, but
Yeah.
still good.
It's a little bit different. Not a different story, but it's a updated take on.
I really like
story, yeah.
Antoine Fuqua's directing style and just the way he worked with the actors as well. It's a really, really well done ensemble film.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the style is very unique compared to it wasn't trying to be like your old school Western.
Right.
It just kind of did
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Appreciated that.
There was a movie on Netflix that maybe I've mentioned here before, but it's called The Harder They Fall. And it's it had that kind of modern take on a Western that was really fun.
Yeah.
Similar to a Tarantino film. So it'd be in the same, if you're a fan of Tarantino, this is kind of in that same heritage, I guess, of movies. It's not a ripoff of Tarantino, but it certainly feels like a development from him.
Exactly.
But yeah.
It just takes those themes and then kind of blows them out in more of a modern direction instead of.
Yeah, and with those things come pluses and minuses, but they're enjoyable for what they are.
Yeah. What about you?
So I've been following your recommendation and watching Making Fun with my kids, and that has been a real treat. That's been so much fun.
I love that
So
show.
my son has a cardboard cutout now of a dinosaur he wants to build, kind of copying the Dino Taco thing from the first episode. So he's kind of mocked it up and got it ready, and he's got some wood that he's stored up in the garage, and we're going to try to make up a little wooden dinosaur. So, it's just really cool that these guys, for anyone who didn't listen to that episode where Elijah recommended it, it's a show where it's just this guy and several of his friends who have a shop out in upstate New York, and they are
on Netflix. Yeah.
Yeah, and they get kids calling them saying, hey, we want you to build this for us. They choose one of the kids' projects and then build it themselves. And it's always over the top building things. Yep. There's a dino taco. There's a boat that's a guitar. There's all sorts of wild things that they end up making. 8 episodes, so 8 different kind of things. But in watching the guys make these projects for these kids, your kids are both engaged because it's fun, goofy things, and they're able to watch then the fabrication of these items. And so, of course, it spawns that kind of interest in my son of building stuff, and in the girls, and it at least shows kids how things are made, that things don't just appear, that there's a process and the craftsman behind them, and kind of getting an idea of what those tools look like. So it's really cool. I awesome. Highly recommend going and watching it on Netflix.
Yeah, check it out.
And now, our feature presentation.
So this week, we are going to talk a little bit about storytelling and the creative process in general. So I wish I could say I had made a movie to talk about this thing, but this is probably why this is exactly why I'm talking about it, because I haven't made a movie and because I want to. And that seems like a daunting process. And there have been some things I've read and watched this week that have been really interesting on that front.
Yeah.
So you've written some stuff, though. You've put some things together, made some films.
Yeah. I've written little things. I've made some home films as a kid. Made some films with other friends. I've always been the friend to the filmmaker usually. And just kind of filling in little roles here and there. Been a stunt coordinator, editor.
Awesome.
Actor, director, all of that.
I love the credits of short films that are like,
one name for
super
everything.
long credits, but they're all just one name. It's like, well, you could have just put
the best boy.
Yeah.
Same as the director.
Just put your name.
Second unit director.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
why was it a second unit? Well, we used our mom's card instead of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I've done a little bit of things here and there.
So I've been a part of a lot of projects of making stuff. So specifically to get into it, I'll just get into it the way I got into it, which was watching on YouTube. There is a documentary about How to Train Your Dragons. So, of course, we've talked about that film before. I love that film and the entire trilogy. Yeah, it's the best. But I was looking for I was just interested in some behind the scenes of it. So I found this documentary. It's like an hour long, but it's put together from footage. The director of the film, he, let me see his name, Dean DeBlois. I don't know how to say DeBlois would be how to read it if I read it not like a Frenchman. DeBlois. And Chris Sanders on the first one.
Yeah.
So Dean, though, has a camcorder that he just rolled all the time.
That's so
during the process. And so there's so much footage that he has.
Yeah.
And so it's a really interesting documentary because it's not like, they hired a behind the scenes crew and this is the like on-set photographers doing this kind of stuff. This is just him like recording stuff. And so it's really great. And so they do some interviews that kind of like bookend the thing and kind of give it some structure throughout the whole thing. But it's really fascinating. At the same time, I'm also doing some like art study, I guess, on the book or on the movie, The Mitchells versus the Machines. We've talked about that one on here before too. That's on Netflix. And another animated film from Sony Pictures. And just a really good. So of the same vein and the same people who made Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Oh, they just came out with another one recently. I think Ron's Gone Wrong was a Sony.
Really?
Was that Sony or was that Disney? That was Disney because
it's on Disney Plus. I don't know if it.
I don't think it was Sony. Now that I'm talking about it, I don't think there's.
I think
there's
it's
another
party.
One. I think the guys from Klaus did some of the layout.
Did they do
work.
Storks?
Perhaps, I'm not sure.
I think they might have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, some really good animation recently coming out of these studios. And so as I'm reading all of this, one thing that was fascinating to me, specifically with the documentary, is how some of the moments in the film that I thought were like make the movie, it were not conceived of until way late in the process. So for instance, in the documentary, they're late in the process in terms of story building, character design, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I mean, they've already started doing. There's a lot of balls moving at this point in terms of the production, to where they're kind of like, okay, this is almost a final go ahead, and then we're doing final animations, final renderings, and kind of like the detail work. And that's when they come up with the idea of Hiccup losing his foot, which in my mind is just one of the most beautiful parts of the trilogy. So if you haven't seen the trilogy, or if you have, just to point out the arc that like the movie starts with this little scrawny kid who takes down a dragon with this catapult machine thing he has. And in taking down this dragon, though, he damages the tail so it can't fly.
Yeah, it takes out like half of the wing or whatever, the gliding.
So he's unable to fly. And he goes to try to kill him, and he doesn't have the heart to kill him. So he cuts him loose. The dragon takes off but can't get out, and ends up getting stuck in a ravine kind of because he can't fly. So then, of course, he becomes friends with it, and the story goes on from there. But then at the very end of the movie, him and this dragon are flying. He's helped him build a just with his mechanical skills. He builds a fake tail and is able to kind of use it to fly him by shifting into different positions with, so in order for him to fly, Hiccup has to fly on him. So there's this synergy between them. What's the symbiosis? Yeah, like a symbiotic relationship between them. And then by the end of the movie, he loses his foot. So now he's damaged. Yeah. And he has to have the dragon hold him up at the end of it. And then that whole thing goes through to the very last movie.
Bookends that arc.
Yeah. It's really good. And then even in the like trilogy, by the end, Hiccup has to let Toothless go. And he has the technology basically to let him fly on his own, but he hasn't been doing it because of that symbiotic relationship. And he has to let go and start trusting in Astrid, his wife to be. And so like it's a lot of beautiful stuff happens from there. But that idea came so late. They were thinking about like, should Toothless die? Like that was one of their options. Yeah. And they're like, but then we don't have a sequel. So what do we do? So they were trying to figure that out. And then that was when that idea came up. And now I'm like, cool. What in the world? So I say like, I'd love pieces like that because for someone who wants to make movies or is interested in kind of storytelling with digital media and building those kind of projects, we tend to look at the finished piece and say, okay, you've got the finished piece, so let's deconstruct this. How did they get here? Well, obviously they started with a script. So they had their script and their story nailed down. And then they went on to what did the characters look like? And they designed all these things and put them together. And then they went to this and this and this and this. And so it kind of feels like when you deconstruct it, there should be a really nice, clean, linear line. And it just is not that way at all.
Yeah.
It's just so cool. Wild. And what I think is fascinating, why I thought it was fascinating, is just because sometimes I think that being a professional at your work or like being able to do this kind of thing means that you are able to do it with this like super neat and tidy process. And you start working on it, and then it turns out to be really hard. And then your first draft is terrible, and then your character designs just don't sparkle and they don't look good, and then you go on just all of the ideas. Once you have like this seedling of an idea that's like, oh, this would be an awesome movie, and you start working on it and you're like, oh, this is terrible, there's nothing there.
That happens like all the time when I'm like DMing for like dungeon mastering. I have a very like, there's times that I've designed it to the T, like everything that will happen, all the beats, this is what the direction that they'll go, and then in the middle of it you guys like ask a question as to like, what about that? Or like I think of like, oh, this would be really cool if this happened like right now. And I like I would say like a good probably 60% of the game is off script. Like when I play with you guys, like I'm making names up and on the fly and like all these different things to make this story cohese into one. And typically like when we play games, it's like those moments that you guys love. That's the moment that I really improved, and I had to like twist. Like it has its place to like have something solid, and you always need a good framework. But yeah, that happens a lot where you have to mess stuff up like that, and then that ends up making it, and then people go, oh wow, that was a really good twist. Like the whole, when you guys played your game, there's a scene where you guys came into, you guys were like, oh, does the druid have a room? I had not designed the druid's room. I did not and then there's a dog in there, and there's a pool in which you guys spoke.
Yeah,
to
it was a pretty. It felt like a really cool room.
That entire room was made up right in that moment.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And all the dialogue and all the characters, and I hadn't even figured out the hag yet because you guys weren't even going to get to this witch character that you guys had to kill.
Yeah,
all that made up. But
that's awesome.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's great. It's like. I don't. It just shows that so much of what we see as being carefully, meticulously planned, it's just not. And I think that, like that sometimes, so that I look back on a lot of this thing, my growth in specific skills of doing something. And when I'm young in a skill and I'm really aspiring to be good at it, then I want the list. Tell me how to do it. What do you do? How does this work? Give me the guideline that's going to kind of unlock the whole thing for me.
Numerical order.
Yeah, give me the Lego instructions and I'll be fine.
Yeah.
But the truth is that the skill set, when someone knows what they're doing, it's not so much like, well, I'm going to tell you what we're doing. It's like, I'm going to show up and I'm going to just take the materials that I have and I'm just going to do with it. And I'm confident that I have the skills necessary to turn these raw materials into a chair or, whatever the project is that is happening is that, okay, I don't know what we can do with this, but I can take this and run with it, right? Like I can make something from it. And a lot of times that desire for clear plans are really kind of a sign that you're still amateur. You don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's like when you know what you're doing, you realize how volatile the work is. And so it doesn't mean you don't plan. It just means that you're not putting so much stock into the plans because you know things are going to change.
Yeah.
Right. I remember a very interesting piece from Andrei Tarkovsky's book, Sculpting in Time. Mm-hmm. For those of you who don't know, Andrei Tarkovsky is a Russian filmmaker who made, I think, 7 or maybe 9 films in his career, very few. Mm-hmm. And he died young. He was exiled from Russia and I think lived in Italy for a little while and then died in Switzerland, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. And I love his films. They're really interesting. But he says in the book that eventually he gave up on any kind of storyboards or anything. He's like, I don't know what the movie's going to be. I haven't seen the room we're filming in, right? So much is shaped by reality in terms of just the room that how in the world are you expecting me to come up with storyboards and why in the world would I do that? I know the essence of the story and I'm going to show up and shoot what I see. Yeah. And it was just a really fascinating take on making a movie. Cause typically when I'm stressing about whenever I've done things, I'm stressing about the details and it's no, if you're a professional, just trust your instinct and your gut and show up. Yeah. And not even professional in terms of you've got this badge, but just trust your instinct and your gut and do something with it. Yeah. And then when you get to the cutting room, you're going to see all the problems that you had that you didn't know, the shots that you didn't know you needed, and you're going to have to figure out a way to make what you've got work. And then you're either going to go back and reshoot or you're going to do something totally different. Mm-hmm. And, so yeah, just the process of making things is not super straightforward. Just go make stuff. I think that's what's so encouraging to me about this, reading this stuff and even looking at the drawings of the movie and how the movie unfolded with the Mitchells versus the Machines in the book. The same type of a thing. They know they want to make this movie and then they have this certain vision of what the robots are going to be and kind of what the story is going to be. And then it turns into, oh, wait a second, actually, let's make it more about this family. Let's, there's a lot of shifts that happen that turn the movie into what it is. Yeah. It just changes the whole thing. Yeah. I think that definitely that could happen in any movie. I think especially when you're looking at something like the Mitchells versus the Machines where you got comedy. It's never more apparent than in comedy that they're just ad-libbing and they're doing all this stuff. But you never think that you're watching a Quentin Tarantino movie or something. Yeah. And he's pulling something out of an actor on the day that changes stories and he has to go, this changes something. I have to change all this stuff. And now, okay, well that's better. I like that. I like what I'm getting from here. Now this needs to move. And that's really what's going on in the director's mind is that he's constantly troubleshooting and having to resynthesize
the whole film into something else. And like you're saying, even up until that movie goes onto the silver screen, that movie's in production.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it's pretty an amazing thing to watch.
Yeah.
And
what's interesting, or another thing that's interesting is like, I think the two different ways, I mean, there's probably tons of different ways to make a movie, but two big a contrast to what you just said.
Yeah.
In terms of the director kind of being the coach of this team, that he's not playing Madden on the computer, and he's actually coaching people who are going to make decisions, and he's not the one pushing the button and making the calls. And so he just kind of sets them up, trains them, and puts them out there.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that's what's happening in a movie. But people, Alfred Hitchcock, people talked about him as being the guy who, when you showed up on set, the movie was already made. You're just making the pictures for the movie that he's made.
Yeah.
So that he was super anal about the details. So he kind of had the storyboards, he had the screen, the script. You're going to say what I want you to say. You're going to do what I want you to do, and that's the end of it.
Yeah.
You're here to make my movie. I've already made my movie on paper, and you're just going to execute the thing.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's a continuum between those two directions.
Yeah.
But that's kind of
There's different methods. Methods of doing the whole process. Like, and that just comes down to who you are.
Yeah.
And how you operate. Like, you just need to find the way that works effectively for you and can achieve the vision ultimately. What will get you that vision, and are you satisfied with a different vision than what you started with?
Yeah.
And I think that's always helpful in that sense. To
where would you sit on that creative line of like trying to?
I love messing with things. Like, I like having a really nice story, but I really love input from people. And I get really easily frustrated if something isn't necessarily jiving, and I like to pivot. So like, if like in this imaginary scenario where there's an actor, and I've hired this actor, and they just aren't giving me what I like. Well, like their acting ability isn't what I wanted, or it's tilted in a different way.
Yeah.
Then things need to change in that character.
Right.
That need to change the whole thing instead of maybe firing them. I mean, it depends on what the movie is and all that. But if I had full creative control over a movie, I would try to craft that role or change it, pivot it to fit that character better. And that's happened in plenty of movies where a character is meant to die. Like if you go to Stranger Things, the boyfriend, there's kind of a bully who has the bat.
Yeah.
He was meant to die, but the director loved his acting. I was like, no, he's got to stay around. Same thing with Poe Dameron in the Star Wars movies.
Okay, yeah.
He was supposed to die, but Oscar Isaacs was such like a gift to the franchise that they kept him alive, and they had to change the script while they're doing it. Even in this huge movie,
yeah, right,
they had to change that. But then you have movies like Back to the Future where they have to change like this. They shoot the whole film, and this actor is just not, like, they watch it afterwards, they watch in the dailies, and he's not getting it, so you have to change the actor. But I think I'm more on the conservative work with what's already given to you instead of making everything shift for the vision, having a collective creative vision and maintaining the helm on that.
Yeah.
It's kind of the way I think about it.
I've been a part of both, like under people who have, we've not done movies, but but I've been directed a lot in terms of shooting. And so I've shot a short film for a friend of mine from school who went on to film school. I DP'd his film. And then me and a friend back in Tulsa, we made our own short film. And so I co-directed / DP'd that one. And then I've done a lot of, I used to work for a television show. So a lot of direction from the producer on what we were doing.
Yeah.
And so I think that I enjoy what I don't enjoy is the in-between that is just arrogant, is just arrogant, right? Like, so there's one end of that where someone is confident, they know what they want, and they're like, no, here's what we're going for. And they've got a clear vision, and they can tell you what they want. And you as the creator, as the craftsman with the camera or with the sound or editing, whatever you're doing, you can be like, okay, they've shown me what they want. I'm going to work toward that end.
Yeah.
And there's a clear mark that I can see. I was able to produce exactly what they wanted.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so I enjoy that when the director has confidence and a tight vision.
Yeah.
I also enjoy it when a director wants cooperation, and it's like really in actuality there's synergy, and like it's just fun to be on set because we're making this movie together, right? Like that's fun. But then there's the middle ground that I think is the most arrogant, where people just aren't confident enough in themselves to say, here's what I know I want. But they're also feel like that being a director means knowing what you want. And so they don't actually let people participate in the process. And so there's that kind of like, oh, I don't, just do something. Oh no, that's terrible. It's just really rough to work with. And so I really like either of them, as long as they're not in the arrogant middle.
Exactly. Like it's arrogance coupled with like a lack of confidence. Like what you're saying, they don't have a confidence in themselves, but they feel like you're saying, they need it. They need the confidence. So it's this weird fake confidence. And that happens everywhere. You have supervisors like that. You have it's because directors are leaders, and that's ultimately what it is. So I think it works best with a situational based leadership where you know your crew, you know the people who are with you, and you know this guy needs better direction. I do have a vision. So I will give him a vision because he's not confident and he's not jiving with me. We're not doing this.
Yeah, exactly.
So he needs direct vision. But this actor, me and him are spinning off each other. I'll let him come in and maybe change the script. Because I agree with what he's like. That's close to my vision. I'm allowing him to change my vision, and not being like, well, you can't change my vision. But I mean, he's giving me stuff, so it's just weird. It's weird, snappy. Like you see directors that do that, or supervisors that are like, we
all know people like that.
Don't have guts.
Exactly.
You need somebody with guts and a heart,
exactly,
to lead the movies.
And often, what the gift? Well, I often say this to people about leadership. Is that like leadership is a gift to people because it takes the responsibility of the decision making off of the individual, so that there can be a camera guy who's like, I just want to know where to put the camera, right? Like, or this is a hard call to make, and a director can just say, we're going to do it here. And then it's like, okay, well, that the decision paralysis that was hitting me because I have all these options and I don't know what to do because I don't know what serves the story and I don't know what you want. Then when you create and you say, no, I want the camera to be low,
that's what he wanted.
Give me a 14 millimeter, and then I can say, okay, I've got those limitations. What can I do to work within there to better light, to better shoot, to make it look good with what he wants?
Do they need more choices or less?
Yeah, exactly. And that can be the type of gift of leadership. That leadership either will give you room to explore if you want it, or it can give you the boundaries to know where you're supposed to stand if that's what you need to.
Exactly.
So it's an interesting. The whole creative process is super interesting because it's so organic and doesn't exactly follow neat, tidy lines.
But ultimately, like if you're good at your craft, you're good at what you do, no matter what you're doing, if you're good at, like, a good measure of that is to somebody can look at it and go, I don't know, like they think it's simple. You make it look easy. That's the thing. Is you're like, oh, how to train your dragon. It's just so seamless. But if you just don't go, oh no, where everything's so all crazy, like you just that's the mark of an expert who makes it look like they never had any issues when they made it.
Exactly.
They never made any changes. That was their vision from the beginning. Like, I'm going to go work on this car. Well, the car's fixed and working. Well, that was my vision from the beginning. I wanted to replace every piece of the car.
Right.
Like they tell you afterwards, oh yeah, I replaced all these pieces, instead of like midway through changing.
Exactly.
About all that. So.
It's the creative process is always going to be fascinating to me, and I hope to be making stuff till I die and beyond. So
Agreed.
If you have any questions, comments, send those to podcast@foxfirefarmhouse.com, and we will try to answer those and address them. But until next time, thanks for listening.
Bye.